This is the best sorcerer leveling build in Diablo 4, and I'm going to show you how to set it up so you can reach level 50 and beyond extremely quickly. This is the Fire Wall Sorcerer build that can do an extreme amount of damage. Not only does this thing clear mobs at insane rates, but you almost might be able to go AFK while doing it. One or two of these skills for this Fire Wall Sorcerer can destroy almost every single thing in its path. Ideally, the build works for you using a lot of your defensive abilities such as Ice Armor, Teleport, and Flame Shield to actually stay alive if you need to, but ideally just using Frost Nova, Inferno, and Firewall can trap enemies within a firewall after freezing them and then deal a massive amount of damage and make enemies essentially walk to their own death. And if needed, you can use Inferno to wrap up the rest of the remaining enemies and clear almost every single mob pack in the game, especially early on. It's extremely OP and extremely fast to level, and the full build is in the link in the description as well as the pinned comment, so make sure to check that out to follow along and save it, because I'm telling you, this is the sorcerer build you need to run. So here are the skills just for a quick overview, but we're going to go ahead and talk about some of them because there are very specific important ones. So first we're going to take Arc Lash as our primary basic damage ability over to Enhanced and then Glinting Arc Lash. This is going to help us reduce some of our cooldowns early as well as give us a little bit of early damage. And then we want 1 out of 5 for Fireball, all the way over to Greater Fireball. That way we're going to do increased burning damage that we've applied as additional direct damage, and it's going to increase the overall radius of Fireball early. Again, all of the order for these skills that I'm taking is in that build link in the description. We also want Devastation, so our max mana is increased, and then Elemental Dominance a little bit later, so that way our core and mastery skills deal 9% increased damage when cast above 50 mana. And then we want to come down here and take Flame Shield. Flame Shield when cast is going to make it so that we are actually immune, and it can actually save you from death every 120 seconds by default. We're also going to take Teleport here 3 out of 5, so we can teleport and become unstoppable. This is going to give us a lot of movement. Here with Enhanced Teleport, it's going to decrease our teleport's cooldown, and Shimmering Teleport, after teleporting, you get 30% damage reduction for 3 seconds, allowing us to move a lot more safely. We also want 1 out of 5 for Ice Armor. This allows us to be a little more tanky. Also Enhanced Ice Armor, so that way your mana regeneration is increased while Ice Armor is active. And then Shimmering Ice Armor, so that if enemies hit you, they have a chance to actually become frozen, allowing you to deal a lot more damage to them. Now we want Frost Nova for 4 out of 5. This is one of our big damage abilities. Eventually you can get it 5 out of 5, but this is going to freeze enemies around us. And then once we go into Enhanced Frost Nova, killing those enemies frozen in Frost Nova reduces its cooldown for up to 4 seconds per cast, giving us much less cooldown on it. And the Mystical Frost Nova, so it makes enemies vulnerable for 4 seconds and increase that to 6 seconds against bosses. Once enemies are frozen, our fire damage is going to do highly increased damage to them, so this is a primary skill. Then we also want to come down here and take 1 out of 3 for Align the Elements, as well as Mana Shield. So that way each time you spend 100 mana, you get 21% damage reduction, allowing us to almost constantly keep up a free 21% DR. Very important, especially for the early and late game. Protection, we also want 3 out of 3, so that way using a cooldown grants 30% of your maximum life as a barrier, giving us barrier quite often. And then we'll come down one more section. We want 5 out of 5 for Firewall. This is our primary damage ability that will melt every single person on the entire screen. This is going to create a firewall on the screen, and you can basically use it to trap enemies and just run them through it over and over. And they will take increased burning damage over a total of 8 seconds. So even if this, as long as they hit this firewall, they will be dying. And then we'll go into Enhanced Firewall, so that way enemies actually get 25% increased burning damage while standing in it, giving us much more damage. And then Mage's Firewall, so enemies continue burning for 3 seconds after leaving the firewall itself, giving us increased overall damage for burning over time. Again, this skill will melt basically everyone. And then finally, we'll come down here into our ultimate skills. We just want 3 out of 3 for Fiery Surge. And this is going to increase our mana generation for 3 seconds after killing a burning enemy. And then for Soulfire, our fire skills cost 12% less mana and actually deal increased damage. And those effects are actually doubled if you're standing still for 2 seconds. And then finally, Warmth. So for every 1 second, you heal a certain amount of your health for each nearby burning enemy, meaning we're going to be constantly healing over and over and over again because all of our enemies are going to be burning from our firewall. And then finally, for our key passive, we want Combustion, so that our burning effects deal 20% increased damage. And because we're applying it in a couple of different ways, this is going to give us a lot of overall extra damage. If you're running these skills, again, in the link in the description, I have each skill in the order that I've taken them from levels 1, from point 1 all the way to skill point 58. So if you follow those, you will be melting everyone early. So for the aspects, you don't really need any of these, but these are the main aspects you want to keep an eye out for. Aspect of Disobedience is going to increase our armor, making us much more tanky at the beginning of the game. So that's the one you definitely want to keep an eye out for. The Storm Swell aspect, so that way you deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies while you have Barrier. Again, we're going to be getting Barrier automatically through some of our passive I've mentioned in the skill tree. So that's also a good one. Aspect of Control, so that way you deal 20 to 35% more damage to immobilized, stunned, or key frozen enemies, which we will be freezing consistently with Frost Nova, allowing us to get a lot more damage. And then Prodigy's aspect, or any other resource aspect, so that way using a cooldown restores 15 to 25 mana. Having resource aspects that will restore our mana early game is going to make leveling and this build come online much quicker. So keep that in mind. As long as you're looking for those maybe 4 aspects, or these ones down here, again, I have exactly where to find them right here on the screen. This will bring the build online and help you level much quicker. And again, all that stuff is in that build description. And for gems, you want to make sure you're running the purple gem for your weapons. This is going to increase our damage over time for our burning damage, rubies for our maximum life, and then jewelry, you can do skulls for the armor, or you can do anything you want for resistances. I'm also going to put up here some gear details for some things to look out for if you're looking for certain pieces on your armor. Ideally, early on, just focus on the most powerful pieces. But if you are curious, these are the stats that you can ideally look for that will give you the best overall bump towards the beginning and mid game for this sorcerer build. And overall for the gameplay loop, ideally we're going to place down a firewall, 1, 2, or 3, really as many as we can, and keep walking big groups of enemies or mob training enemies into these firewalls while these enemies just continue to die by running into the firewall themselves. Once you get big groups of enemies, you can freeze them with Frost Nova and then cast firewalls directly on top of them to burn them while they're frozen. Again, we use our teleport, ice armor, and flame shield to help keep us alive whenever we need it. And then we will use our Inferno ability to wrap the remaining enemies, if we can get them in a group, into a giant snake that will basically take out the rest of the enemies on the screen if you actually do need it. I'm also going to put up right here some gear details. Now for your sorcerer, once you reach the level and unlock both of your enchantment slots, you're going to want to make sure you have the fireball enchantment slotted right here on the first one. So when you kill an enemy, they actually explode in a fireball for 50% of its damage, giving us large explosions across our screen and a lot of overall big boost of damage. And then finally for our firewall enchantment, that's going to be our second enchantment you want to put here. So that way on lucky hit, you have up to a 25% chance when dealing burning damage to actually spawn 2 firewalls additionally for 3 seconds. This is a big enchantment for this build because it gives us additionally more firewalls to do more damage for completely free. And now we're going to talk about how to level quickly with the Barbarian to level 50. Primarily when you start, as long as you skip the campaign, you're going to first want to tackle the Season 4 questline. That Season 4 questline will give you hopefully some additional powers, as well as go ahead and get you probably maybe to level 30 or so. Once you get to level 30, the best kept secret in leveling is now going to be Helltide. So make sure you go ahead and jump over to the Helltide, complete all the events you can possibly find, and continue to run it and increase your threat meter to summon more enemies. And this should be better than running a lot of the other content, such as running dungeons over and over. The Helltide should be the new meta for leveling, so that's ideally what you're going to want to focus on, and especially with double swing active, as well as if you're playing part of the Twist or Tornado build with double swing. This should help you run through a lot of the content very quickly and level very fast. Also make sure you're playing on Veteran or World Tier 2, because you're going to get 50% bonus XP instead of 20% now in Season 4, meaning you're going to level up much quicker by playing on World Tier 2. Also, as you begin to collect resources in Sanctuary, make sure to come in here and craft a bunch of elixirs to make sure you have one going all the time. It's a free 5% XP buff. Also, make sure you stack all of your seasonal blessings in the Urn of Aggression so you can get the highest XP benefit from that as you can. You can get 5 to 10% automatically even before level 50. Again, if you follow that build link in the description, you should have no problems hitting level 50 extremely quickly, maybe even as quick as like 5 hours, and then boosting up past that to start making an in-game build based off of this firewall build. If this was helpful, drop a like, and if you're not subscribed already, what are you doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.